So here we go. So its direction is negative. What about its form?
Negative. Linear.
Linear. Okay, form is linear. It looks like a line. All right, and I would guess it would go somewhere like that. What about its strength?
Oh, it's strong.
Yeah, it's probably strong. All right, it looks really close to a line. What about outliers? Yeah, I don't think there's any either. Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any outliers whatsoever. So what I want to do is just to walk through some of the terms that we've talked about in these first 4 sections before lunch. So then that way you've got at least one thing to reference if you don't have all your other notes, okay? So this should help you to be better prepared. So one of the first things that we talked about was the explanatory versus, versus the response variable. Remember the explanatory variable, it's like explains, all right? It explains, bless you, or predicts. I think you're allergic to my room, Jacob. It explains or predicts the other variable. Okay, so I'm pretty sure there's one that asks you which one of these is the explanatory variable in the situation. All right, so it'll give you a situation. And then the response variable is what happens as a result. What happens as a result of that explanatory or the explanatory variable. All right, so it's our result. Okay. So those were our 2 terms that we started with in 3.1. Explanatory variable and response variable. Okay. And then we threw in a different kind of bar chart. We called it a segmented bar chart. Remember, with a segmented bar chart, it shows me percentages and it stacks the data on top of itself. So it may have a red piece of data, it might have a blue piece of data, might have a green piece of data, okay, something like that. But it's got percents over here on that left-hand side.
And aren't they, if they're the same, they don't explain each other.
Okay, so, and here's the thing we need to know about it. We're always looking, is there an association? And here's the answer to that, okay? If the bars do not match, okay, so do not match, there is an association. Okay, and I think that's one of the things they're going to ask. There's a question where it says, looking at this segmented bar chart, is there an association? Okay, so all you're checking, do they match perfectly? If they do, no. If they don't, yes. Okay, so if the bars do not match, there is an association. The last 3 sections dealt all with the scatter plot and correlation. Okay, so that's nice. It's kind of just one big topic kind of lumped in there together. But we had lots of different little details that we talked about in that process. Okay, so be sure you've got that there with the bars do not match. Then we've got that association. Okay. All right, so then we started talking about our scatter plots. And remember, if we want to create one, we're going to go to our applet. And we're going to choose 2 quantitative variables. Okay. And then we'll list our variables and our numbers. Okay, so our numbers go in that second line. And then it's our titles of our variables, our explanatory variable and our response. Okay? Okay. But I'm pretty sure you don't have to draw one. I think it just gives it to you. Okay. Now, the only other thing that we had to do with scatter plots was to describe them. Okay, was to describe them. And remember, when we described them, those were those things we talked about just a few minutes ago in the warm-up, was our direction. And direction has two options. It's either positive going up or negative going down. Its form was either linear or nonlinear. Okay, so it's either a line or it isn't. And then its strength, we actually had 4 words, but I think most of these will stay. It's either weak, moderate, or strong. Okay, so those are the 3 options for that description. And then the only other thing we talked about were outliers, bless you. Okay, and they are outside the pattern. So if it asks you to describe, those are the things that they're looking for. Right? The direction, the form, the strength, and then do you have outliers? Okay, so those are the things we're going to look for. Go to work tonight. All right, and so then we talked about correlation. Okay, we talked about correlation was the next thing that we talked about. Okay, when we talk about correlation, remember the letter we talk about is R. Okay, we can get to it from that same applet where we put in the data a few minutes ago. So it's the same applet. We just want to be sure we hit the button underneath the graph that says calculate correlation. Okay, and it will give me that R value. All right, but you got to put the data in for that to work. Right? The only other thing to remember about correlation is it goes from -1 to +1. And then it can be anything in between those. Okay? At 1 and -1, it's perfectly linear. All right, or you might say very strong. Okay. At 0.5, we start talking about it being moderate. Okay. Between -1 and probably about points or 1 and 0.7, we'd call that strong. Right, so there's strong in between there. And then weak as we get close to 0. Okay, so just looking at those decimal numbers that we might, bless you, be given. Okay, so it's a number R. We can get to it from our applet. Just have to be sure we hit calculate correlation. Okay, all right. And so then yesterday we talked about the properties. Okay, and there are just a couple. All right, correlation does not have units. Okay, it's just R equals and a decimal number. All right, so if one of your option is that's Rebecca, she's so funny. Professor McGonagall, if you're a Harry Potter fan, passed away this morning. And yeah, yes. So Rebecca's like, Mom. It's like, sorry. That's what she just sent me. Yes. She was such a great actress. I loved her. I did too. Me too. Okay, so correlation does not have units. All right. The second thing we learned is that we could switch the variables, okay, who we put in first versus who we put in second, and correlation stays the same. Right. And then the last thing we learned is that we can change units on a variable. And our correlation stays the same. Okay, so those were our properties. Okay, jot that down. This is really all you're going to need for this quiz. It's not hard if you've got these details, which is nice. It's going to be a nice one.
See, I wrote it down.
You wrote it right here, didn't you, Cameron? And that big trap you got up there.
I don't think I've used a single note.
Chase is just absorbing it in his dreams.
I don't think I've used a single note in one of our quizzes or tests.
It's okay. Sometimes you don't have to. Good. Me too,
Hey,
sister.
whatever,
Me
yeah.
too. I needed it the whole time I was in statistics. Yeah, I did. It's okay. I was grateful for a professor that let us, so. Because sometimes they don't. My calculus, no go. We had to know all that mess. But I don't know. It made sense to me. Statistics never really made sense to me when I was learning it the first time. But I also took it in the summer at 7:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's another reason.
That was my problem, and I did it in 5 weeks. So, yeah, 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, 5 weeks. It was brutal. It was brutal. I lived on, and I had to do it at Cookville. I was at Tech, and I had to live on campus. They moved us all into the oldest dorm to live there because I didn't want to pay for an apartment. Y'all know what a cave cricket is?
Yep.
Okay, one of them got in my clothes one morning because the building was so old, and like, y'all don't know, but I hate anything creepy crawly. And so, like, I lost half my religion and my life killing that thing. Like, it was bad.
That's what I'm saying.
They are fast, and they jump at you. And the first time, and the only time I've ever used profanity in front of my mother-in-law was at her house, and one got on my arm, and I lost my ever-loving mind. Yep.
So how'd you do for cicada season?
I do okay with cicada season,
No.
except when they get in my hair. I don't like them to get in my hair.
That was the first time I've ever seen this.
That's man.
Really?
And then I went outside. Why was they all hitting me in the face?
Don't they
With
come
that?
out
Like
every 20 years?
every
17 years or
13,
so.
17.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I will not be around next time they come.
Yes, you will.
I'm long gone. I'm going to.
Honey, they come everywhere.
No, I think it's just the south.
No, they come everywhere.
They're everywhere, but
They
mainly
were
the
everywhere,
South.
and then we got trees. There was all got trees.
Cute.
Yeah, got you got on one bus. It was really
I got one that crawled through my ventilation system in the car.
Oh, yeah.
I got one in the car.
The worst is like if you go like to a drive-through window at night, especially, and they're everywhere around the light in the drive-through window, and you're like, please give me my food, and you barely got your window down, Anyway,
I picked them up, but we can throw them outside.
yeah. They love to they sat on our fence, all around our fence. I just don't like them hitting me, because it's like, phew, phew, phew.
I remember
Yeah.
that fire, the one day we had the fire drill, and they all came at us, like, oh my god.
They did, but like
Yeah.
They came
Okay, so let's talk real quick. We're going to be done. Outliers, okay? So if it's in the pattern, okay, so we're talking about outliers. If it's in the pattern, correlation gets stronger. So it gets closer to 1 or -1. Okay, so if it's in the pattern, it gets stronger. If it's outside the pattern, correlation gets weaker. So closer to 0. And then this whole thought of correlation versus causation, okay? A strong correlation. So just because we get this nice linear pattern, okay, does not mean that one variable causes the other. It could cause it, but it may not. So they call it causation. Okay? And here's an example. All right. T-shirt size. Does not cause your ACT score to be higher or lower.
No, your sleep does.
Yes, how you feel that day probably has a direct correlation, all right, and causes that, all right? Okay, so that's everything that's on your quiz, all right? If you want to, we've just got a couple minutes to lunch. If you want to go ahead and get the rest of your notes out, if you want to do that so that when we get back, we're ready. Go ahead and get your calculator. I'm not sure you'll need it, but if you want to go ahead and get it so that way it's at your desk, I'll get the computers during lunch, okay? And then when we get back after potty break, we will take our quiz, okay? And then I've put up all the makeup work, okay, through today. So the stuff from this week is over there as well. So if you've got anything you need to make up this afternoon after your quiz is a good time to do that, okay?